A happy Friday to you, especially if you started Deontay Johnson. He finally scored a touchdown. See, folks, miracles can happen. George Pickens was actually started in more leagues than Deontay Johnson, and he did not come through for you. They almost had a touchdown there, but they don't count.
What a strange play that was.
They would count if I were the commissioner. Which one? The non-toe
Pickens,
drag?
like not even attempting
Yeah,
his feet down.
Yeah.
yeah.
Telling.
You gotta do that. Yeah. What'd you think of the game?
It was interesting watching Levis. I thought he did well when a lot of pressure on him, and some of the throws in the first half were extremely impressive. It would have been fun to see if Tyjae Spears didn't fall down on that one
Yeah.
where he laid it out in front of him.
Yeah.
But I thought, look, I expected him to struggle. It was a tough spot going into Pittsburgh, short week, and he looked like a rookie quarterback. Some great throws, some great, showing off that arm talent, and then sometimes where he just looked like he was under duress and flustered. I think it's kind of have to be what happens within rest of the way. I hope that the way the game ended and his stat line does not force Mike Vrabel and the Titans to go back to Ryan Tannehill. Like, stick with Levis rest of the way.
I thought he played pretty well, honestly. Yeah,
I thought I was so encouraged by his first half. I think Jamie really encapsulated it. He really had a great first half, but the second half was worse. And I got the vibe. Tell me if you guys saw this or not. He reminded me of Happy Gilmore at the driving range. Do you remember when Happy Gilmore was just sending golf balls into the stratosphere?
Yeah.
And everybody was like, oh, yeah, you could make a killing, on what was it, like driving range contests or whatever, bets that you make at the driving range about who could hit it farther. But he sucked at the short game. And sure enough, Levis was 0 for 4 in the red zone. And Jamie mentioned the play to Tyjae Spears. He had Hopkins open for 2 could have been touchdowns.
Yeah.
One where Hopkins was open in the end zone was a little bit of a tougher play, but both times he dropped his eyes. And those are things that a quarterback really should not do. There was some good. There was a lot of bad, especially in the second half. That last drive, I had Nick Casas's voice in my head saying he's just begging to throw an interception. He should have thrown like 4 of them on one drive. He's got a lot to build on. I agree. The Titans should stick with him. When he's got easier matchups, you might feel better about starting him.
Okay. Does he have easier matchups coming up? We'll see at Tampa Bay, at Jacksonville, Carolina. It's a mixed bag, I'd say. But Levis is 58% rostered. And listen, you need quarterbacks next week. There's only really one quarterback that I see on waivers. We're going to do a Beat the Waiver Wire segment, but we've got 4 teams on bye. We've got some offensive juggernauts. The Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Eagles, they're all on bye, and the Rams are also. I mean, we got Kupp and Nakua on a bye. So you need some players to beat the waiver wire.
They might be on a bye this week too.
They are, yeah. So be on the lookout for that. And, maybe hang on to Will Levis. But the guy I was going to mention, by the way, is Taylor Heineke. I think of the available quarterbacks, he's probably the best. But we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah. Adam, you should also mention the bye NATO in week 13. Josh Allen's on bye then. There's some other quarterbacks that won't be around. Levis plays Indianapolis at home that week. Maybe that's a matchup that you could start him in.
I think the thing when we get to that point in the season, though, you're going to have half your league not even paying attention. So you should be able to get some players.
I hope it's not that way.
Oh, the rest of this game, Pittsburgh 20, Tennessee 16. I thought it was a really good game. Not a lot of penalties, which was great. Only 17. But not a lot of turnovers. Only 1 turnover was on the last play of the game. But
Levis got bailed out by a bunch of penalties too.
Yeah, and Pickett was begging to throw some picks too.
Yes. So anyway, your major takeaways. I think the Steelers probably a little bit more interesting with the Pickens Deontay split, Jamie. And is it basically start Deontay, sit Pickens? Is that how you're gonna go into every week, and then we'll kind of play the matchups? But what do you think?
I wouldn't necessarily say Pickens is an automatic sit right away. Again, if he catches that touchdown, we feel a little bit better about him. But you've now seen 2 games of the 3 with Deontay Johnson back, where it's been a lot of Deontay Johnson. And we said this going in to the game that it was right back to a lot of the same route running that Pickens was doing before Deontay Johnson got hurt, or basically last season.
Yeah.
So my thought going into the year all along was always going to be that Deontay Johnson was still going to be the focal point of the passing game. And you've seen that now, that's kind of what this offense is going through. Pat Freiermuth will hopefully come back soon, and that could change some things as well. But for now, yes, I would say Deontay Johnson's a must-start guy in PPR. Still going to consider him on the fence in non-PPR because I don't think he's all of a sudden going to score a boatload of touchdowns. But you got to be more encouraged by this. But yeah, I wouldn't say Pickens. You're automatically sitting him.
Dave, do you think we should buy, sell, or hold on the Steelers running backs who are performing a little bit better lately?
I'd buy into them continuing to run the ball, and I think Najee's looked good for a couple of weeks now. I was encouraged by what Warren did, and especially encouraged that Warren went back to being involved in the passing game because last week he wasn't as much, and Najee was. The Steelers are going to lean on this because I don't know if they can lean too heavily on Kenny Pickett. And so Najee's look better. I would start him as a number 2 RB. Warren is a number 3 RB, bye week RB, maybe a low end starter in PPR leagues. But they were both really good. It was encouraging.
Okay, on the other side of the ball, what do you guys think? Jamie, what do you think about DeAndre Hopkins? So he got his targets. He didn't get his production. Dave mentioned he was open in the end zone, 4 catches for 60 yards on 11 targets. And kudos to Joey Porter, rookie cornerback, who asked Mike Tomlin if he could shadow Hopkins. He was on him a lot, and he did a pretty good job. But yeah, anyway, after the huge game, the 3 touchdowns last week, he's back to 10 PPR fantasy points this week. Your thoughts going forward on Hopkins?
You missed your sell high window. We said that on Wednesday. When you're asking who's the sell high candidate, that was the guy I mentioned. I look, you're going to get some good games. You're going to get some struggling games. That's what happens with a rookie quarterback, and really nothing else to help DeAndre Hopkins, take coverage away. Hopefully Treylon Burks is okay, and that was a scary injury. It seems like he's trending in the right direction after what happened. So, who knows how long he'll be out, but Nick Westbrook-Akina and, Kyle Phillips, they don't scare opposing defenses. Chigo Okonkwo has been a disappearing act. So it's Will Levis looking for DeAndre Hopkins. Understandably so, is what he should do. It was great against Atlanta. But that's going to be, I think, a problem for as good as he can be still, Hopkins. He's not going to be consistent at his age in this offense and the attention he's going to see. So he'll be, I think, what he's been probably the majority of the season, a borderline number 2, number 3 receiver, more on the number 3 side.
Is there something there with Phillips? Would you add him in a deep league? Deep PPR league?
Yeah, I think when you talk about like Khalil Shakir and maybe we'll see what happens with the Patriots receivers with the Kendrick Bourne injury, whether it's a Juju or Tyquan Thornton, because I think we're all excited about Douglas. But those type of guys, there could be something there.
Yep. 8 targets over the last 2 games. Some clutch ones, some really good throws to Phillips from Levis last night.
Any thoughts on Derrick Henry, just to wrap up this fun?
Start him. Maybe not a top 10 running back like he used to be, but still getting the work, getting a few catches, 3 catches, right?
Yeah.
I think that you just keep rolling with him.
Read the schedule again.
We've got at Tampa Bay, at Jacksonville, Carolina, Indy, at Miami in week 14.
There's really 2 games there based on the narrative that we've kind of been talking about where I think they're probably chasing points significantly. Jacksonville, which they always play Jacksonville tough, so it's hard to say that. And then the Dolphins. Otherwise, they're probably going to be in the rest of those games.
Yeah.
How do you feel about 2 matchups against Houston in the fantasy playoffs?
Should be in those games. Again, unless their defense just craters. And the thing that's a little troublesome coming off of the last 2 games for them, their run defense is falling apart. Because we know their pass defense is not great. And if their run defense is going to fall apart, then they're going to be in trouble.
But it's funny you mentioned Houston, right? Because Houston has, over the past few years, been the worst run defense in football. And Derrick Henry, he scores over 20 fantasy points basically every time he faces them. Looking at his most recent games, 126 yards and a touchdown, 219 yards and 2 touchdowns, 250 and 2, 212 and 2, 211 yards and 3 touchdowns. Derrick Henry versus Houston is a thing. It's basically the best production of any running back against any team. It has to be.
However, better than what he does against Jacksonville?
Oh, yeah. It's every single game. He had 126 yards and 1 touchdown the last time he faced Houston. That was his worst performance by far since 2019. It's incredible. But Houston is much better against the run this year. But, man, that history, you love it. And he faces them twice in the fantasy playoffs. All right, we can wrap up on this game here.
I will say this, though. I know we were saying hold Tyjae Spears through the trade deadline. I would not be dropping him. The one thing you might fear is clearly the Titans are starting to look toward the future. And will they start to give Spears more work?
They already are. I mean, he played more snaps than Henry last night.
Okay, so Dave, that's the end of Thursday Night Football.
Nah.
Also, someone wants to know what Jamie thinks of the Adam Halloween story scandal. That JB's take on the recent Adam Halloween story scandal.
What's the Halloween story scandal?
The scandal is that Adam told my story yesterday. You told me this.
Oh, you ratted on me.
It's not ratting. You said
it
in
on a
public.
program.
I could have gone back and
He
watched
wasn't
the
watching
podcast myself.
a program.
I like that you choose this guy's name, by the way.
Oh God, I didn't even notice.
What was it?
Hugh Jass. Yes, thank you.
Hilarious.
My bad. All right, listen, we got a lot of great content for you this weekend.
Huge ass.
We got our mailbag. We're actually recording our mailbag at 11 a.m. this morning, so a little bit earlier. So we'll read your Apple Podcast questions and your emails at fantasyfootball@cbsi.com. YouTube.com/fantasyfootball today. If you want to watch our live stream at 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday to get your questions answered. And we'll hang out. We'll watch the end of the Dolphins-Chiefs game together. 11:30 a.m. YouTube.com/fantasyfootball today.
Hey,
yes.
Do you want to hear the whole story, or are you just going to tell?
Nah, that's all right.
I mean, there's another half to the story.
If we have time at the end of the show. And HQ, CBS Sports HQ Fantasy Football today, the OG version, is at 9 a.m. this week. 9 a.m. Because we have the London game early in the morning.
It's not London.
It's not what? It's not London?
Correct.
Come on, Dave. That's the game.
I knew you were going with that.
No, it's not in London, but it's the Dolphins and the Chiefs. Yeah. In Germany, 9:30.
I love that you knew that I was going to correct you on that.
Yeah, that's right.
That's low-key brilliant.
He sends me a text. He sends me a text this morning.
Well, don't react, right?
Don't correct me when I say London. Don't correct me.
He did the exact same thing with the Bengals and who they were playing.
Oh, that's right. That's right. He has a trick. Well, listen, the AFC, I knew like it was going to be that game. So you weren't on the show. I had to come up with something clever. Let's get our news and notes. Oh, actually, impromptu segment. Really, let's talk about backup quarterbacks and wide receivers. It's a big question this week, right? And let's talk about what we've seen so far from good wide receivers, sometimes great wide receivers who have had backup quarterbacks. We haven't really had a ton of it this year yet.
Well, how far are you stretching this, though? One week replacements?
Here are the guys I have, right? Garrett Wilson, so far, is the number 33 wide receiver per game in non-PPR, number 24 in PPR. Devontae Adams played one game without Garoppolo so far. It was with O'Connell. He had 8 catches for 75 yards on 13 targets. Amari Cooper in his last 4 games without
throw Myers in there too. Myers was bad.
Myers was bad, yeah. Amari Cooper in his last 4 games without Watson, 2.6 points, 14.8, 4.2, and 14.9. If I had to do the quick math, I'd say he's averaging about 9 points per game, maybe 10.
So every other week. We got him next week then.
Yeah. The best has been the Colts wide receivers, but that was kind of an obvious upgrade just because Minshew was going to throw more than Richardson, but they've been great. And then DJ Moore. DJ Moore has 3 straight games with about 55 yards and no touchdowns with Bajent.
Well, if you're going to do Zach Wilson, Garrett Wilson, you got to do Marquise Brown for the season.
Okay, fair. I think he's probably been in the same range. Let me see where he is per game. He's 27th per game. This has been bad.
That's wild because we kind of had the impression that Marquise Brown was doing well with Dobbs. He had a bunch of games with over 15 PPR points.
I think he's been all right. I mean, 13.3 points per game. It's not bad. It's not a player that you just outright sit or anything like that. But all of these guys are capable of a lot more, except, not Colts situation aside. And Gardner Minshew, I think we would have to regard as one of the better backup quarterbacks. But my point is, I think people
Thielen too. Thielen had a big game with Andy Dalton.
Thielen had a big game with Andy Dalton. DeAndre Hopkins had a big game with Will Levis, and then a stinker.
Yep. Yeah, I knew I was going to forget some.
Yeah, Hopkins' average is probably pretty great.
Right. That's why average can be tricky.
But there's a lot of risk. There's a lot of risk. So anyway, we can talk about that as the games come. But obviously, there's going to be a ton of Kupp and Nakua. 2 starts last year. One of them was against the Jets. The other one, he played pretty well against the Cardinals. I think he was like something like 21 of 26. It wasn't a great stat line because he didn't throw a lot, but I'd say he acquitted himself well. But yeah, anyway, this is this is tough. I mean, this is not an easy it's not an easy subject. You don't really know what to expect. But I think Jaren Hall could be awful. Right? He could be awful. I was surprised at how high you guys have Jordan Addison ranked. I don't want to start Addison. You guys seem to want to start him.
Well, I mean, think about what we're missing this week. It's not just him. It's the 2 Rams guys. It's Marquise Brown. It's DJ Moore. There's a lot of guys dealing with backup quarterbacks. Plus, you have the 4 teams on a bye. If this, I got asked this question on the radio show this morning. Like, what to expect with Jordan Addison? Like this week, you expect probably a little bit of a down game. Next week, you hope with Dobbs back or with Dobbs starting, that it's going to be a good game for him. But when you start to just look at the landscape of what the position is, like, you got to hope a full week of a game plan installed for him. You're right. He might be awful, but he also might do get enough easy throws from guys that are going to be open in Addison and Hawkinson that I think you could buy into it. And let's not make any mistakes here. He's stepping into the same situation that Will Levis just stepped into last week, facing the Falcons as a backup quarterback. And he may have not 4 touchdowns, but maybe he is 202 with a couple mistakes on top of it, and those go to Hawkinson and Addison. So I'm not going to completely run away from him. Like, I'm not going to run away from Kupp and Nacua. You just downgrade them. And so if you have better options, I don't know how many people do this week. I mean, you said it, Adam. You went overpaying like crazy for Demario Douglas because you needed somebody to start. And there are a lot of people in that situation. I made 3 trades yesterday to cover some holes. Couple were good. One was probably questionable, but I needed to, find some starters. And so, you have to do what you have to do at some point. But I think in terms of Addison, just on his own, still a number 2 receiver for me.
Same here. I started the week studying the quarterbacks themselves. So I have notes on Jaren Hall and Clayton Tune and Brett Rippon and what I think they might be able to do. But the thing that I come back to is, what offenses are they in and what are they going to be asked to do? And in the case of Rippon, for example, I'm sure that most of his throws are going to be inside of 15 yards. And all he needs to do is just be on the same page as Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. And hopefully those guys will be safe enough to start in PPR with lowered expectations. Non-PPR, probably a different story. There's no way you should expect either of those guys to be what they were with Matthew Stafford for obvious reasons. Rippon isn't anywhere close to as good as Stafford. And Jaren Hall, same thing. But think about that Vikings offense. I don't know if this is going to turn Minnesota into a run-heavy squad.
Well, if they want to lose, it will.
Well, and I just don't think that's Kevin O'Connell's nature. And so if Jaren Hall is going to throw a lot, of course, there's going to be some turnover-worthy throws and some mistakes along the way. But we've seen Jordan Addison scoot past defenses, and Jaren Hall should be able to get him the ball in space pretty routinely.
It's also, Adam, we went through this a few times to some degrees of success, some not so much. Twice in the 49ers tenure with Kyle Shanahan, and Nick Mullins tying into Minnesota is part of that. But, the one year when Garoppolo went down and everybody was healthy there in San Francisco, I think it was 2018, Mullins had some pretty good production.
Remember his first game on a Thursday night?
That was 2018 or that was 2020?
I don't know if it was 2018, but it was his first NFL start.
The Raiders, right? Yep.
I think so. And he ended up playing great. And then you're probably going to say Brock Purdy being the other one.
Well, I'm just saying, like, when you have these offensive play callers, that's where I was going. You have these offensive play callers. You saw it with Baker Mayfield last year. He was a disaster. And then he gets to the Rams and he was competent. And that was with a really scaled down receiving core. There was no Kupp. There was no, I think Van Jefferson was just coming back from injury. It was terrible. Mm-hmm. And he made plays. And so, you give Sean McVay time, you give Kevin O'Connell time. Those 2 teams in particular, I think will find ways, as Dave just laid it out. They'll find ways to scheme these guys open, easy throws, make it where these guys are comfortable. So do you start the KJ Osbornes of the world? No. Do you stick with the Jordan Addisons of the world? Yeah, I think so. Again, it just depends on, are you loaded at the position? Do you have great flex options? Then you start those other guys. But I think in case of Kupp, Nacua, Addison, you just downgrade him a little bit. Like Marquise Brown's a little tougher to trust, but I still think, again, he's in that same category. I just don't trust the system as much.
All right. Well, Heath actually has Jordan Addison 38th. So I'm sorry. You guys are high on him. Heath is not high on him. So I probably could have gotten the Heath sigh and Heath. Heath, how do you feel about Jordan Addison today? Yeah, that's what I thought. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll go through our news and notes. One question for each game, beat the waiver wire, and then we'll start talking about the games. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today. All right, here we go with our news and notes. Matthew Stafford missed practice. Not expecting him at this moment. Kyler Murray's off the injury report. Same thing happened last week. Still not expecting him at this moment. Deshaun Watson also seems unlikely to play. He didn't rule it out. He just said, he's not, can't commit to it.
He's trusting the experts as opposed to when he rushed back against the Colts.
There you go. Gus Edwards practiced in full. Amari DiMercato missed practice again. And Dameon Pierce missed practice again. I can't imagine you'd be interested in Keontae Ingram.
No, but Devin Singletary would be a good bye week replacement running back if he's going to be the main guy for Houston. I would imagine that he would be. Boone would play third downs, and Texans would try and roll with that against the Bucs.
And not only that, I mean, again, I don't want to just steal all of the beat the waiver wire fun, but Devin Singletary is something like 44% rostered. And if he gets this one game audition, it could be a Chuba Hubbard situation. I don't think he's going to completely take Pierce off the field, but I think he's worth adding.
He might. Pierce had some really good runs last week, though, just not near the goal line.
Raheem Mostert should play. CEH is out. That shouldn't really matter. Jerick McKinnon was limited. Unfortunately, Saquon Barkley says he's going to be dealing with a high ankle sprain for the rest of the season.
Ooh.
So, yeah. And then, you wonder, do you wonder if they could shut him down at some point? Because they're obviously not headed in the right direction.
Well, why would they care?
For his sake. Not going to make the guy go out there and play hurt.
Well, I would imagine if he says he's playing, he's going to play.
Right. If he was truly hurt, he would stop himself from playing.
Right.
Fine. Well, either way, if you're talking about trading for Saquon Barkley, does the fact that he said he's going to be dealing with it all year give you pause?
I think it just lowers what you should be, expecting to give away.
Right.
But the Barkley manager is not going to just give him away. He's been producing with this ankle sprain.
Would you rather have Jonathan Taylor or Saquon Barkley rest of season?
Taylor makes sense in the wake of that news, and you should be able to. What you should do is, if you're really trying to acquire Saquon Barkley, send that news story to whoever you're trading with and say, "I'm not paying what you think I should pay for him."
Puka Nacua limited with a knee injury, but we're ranking him. Drake London missed practice again. So we'll talk about that game and what that might mean for Kyle Pitts. Michael Wilson missed practice. Curtis Samuel still missing practice. Josh Palmer missed practice, their first practice of the week. Deebo Samuel says he's ready to go. They're on their bye, but Deebo will be back next week. And Josh Downs popped up on the injury report. We'll have to keep an eye on that. He practiced Wednesday, was limited on Thursday. Darren Waller's out and could miss several weeks. Gerald Everett practiced in full. On the offensive line, we'll see if Tyron Smith could play this week. And Teron Armstead maybe. And the Giants.
I believe Mike McCarthy said Tyron Smith is playing.
Oh, excellent. On, let's see, Monday night, Rasul Douglas looks like he's going to play for the Buffalo Bills. Very excited for that one.
Sunday night, right?
No,
Sunday
Monday
night.
A double game of the week, Dave. Yes, it's Sunday night. And it's the Bills and the Bengals. A double game of the week, folks. It's Sunday night, of course. I couldn't decide which one was I more excited about. But yeah, I don't know.
It's this one, right? You got to be this one.
I think the Bengals are gonna win by 7,
if not more.
I was convinced that they were going to beat the Bills in the playoffs last year because I thought the Bills could not cover them, and I think the same problem exists. And that's most of the key. Willie Gay, linebacker for the Chiefs, he was limited, so that was good. Dolphins secondary getting healthier. Graham Gano is on IR. Don't start him.
How do you feel about that? How that all played out?
I think it's a shame. I think if he was really hurt, that's the reason they lost the game. It's like it was the right decision to kick the field goal, but if he was really injured, then it was the wrong decision. Bad news for Devin Singletary, by the way. Tampa Bay defensive tackle Vita Vea practiced in full.
Did you mention Gerald Everett?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. One question for each game. Dallas is at Philadelphia. Should we sit? Oh, wait. Let me get some scary music. Should we sit Tony Pollard?
No. Lowered expectations.
Lowered expectations.
I think realistic expectations at this point. Like, he's just not been great.
Hope he catches the ball. We need that. Chicago at New Orleans. Starter sit DJ Moore after 3 straight games with around 50 to 55 yards and no touchdowns. Starter sit DJ Moore.
He's a flex, easier to start in PPR than non-PPR. I have been a fan of the Saints secondary pretty much all year long, and I would expect them to hassle more.
Still a number 2 receiver.
Addison or DJ Moore?
Addison.
More.
Indianapolis is at Carolina. Will there be enough pass attempts for Gardner Minshew and Josh Downs to be worth starting?
Yes.
Agreed.
Do you think starting Pittman over? Are you starting Pittman over all? Not all. Most of the wide receivers with backup quarterbacks, Rams guys, Moore, Addison.
The only ones I've ranked ahead of him are Cooper Kupp, and does Garrett Wilson count?
Yeah,
Does
yeah,
Devontae Adams count?
I don't know if. Yeah, Adams counts.
Yeah, I'll start Adams over him.
Okay.
I would start Adams and Wilson if that's the category. I would start Pittman over Kupp.
All right. Let's see. Rams are at Green Bay. How do you feel about the Rams wide receivers? It's not just the question of the game. It might be the question of the week. How do you feel about the Rams receivers, Jamie?
I think Kupp is still a must-start guy, but again, lowered expectations. So not a top 10 guy for me, but still top 15. And Puka is still inside the top 20 for now, but if he has another limited practice, I may drop him a few spots.
I don't know how many times I can sing the lowered expectations. So I was always one of my favorite.
I don't know if everybody gets that.
I got a few people in the chat are feeling it, like that Mad TV reference. Someone said great reference.
Okay.
Dave usually sings it with me. Minnesota at Atlanta. Start or sit Jordan at? No, I can't ask that. I already did that. Start or sit Kyle Pitts. He stinks again, by the way. I've been sort of glossing over it, but he's been horrible since a good 2-game stretch. But the London injury is interesting, and the Heineke upgrade, hopefully, is interesting. Start or sit Kyle Pitts.
Low-end starter.
Fair to say.
I like Njoku better. I like Logan Thomas better. I like Taysom Hill and non-PPR better. But hopefully, like you said, the 2 situations, no London if he's out, and changing quarterback will be the thing that Kyle Pitts needs. Then you might want to sell him after that.
Sure. So Heineke's ADOT last week was 9.7 yards. It was a full yard higher than Ritter's season high in a game. So a more aggressive passer should lead to good things for Pitts because he runs routes further downfield. Just trusting any Falcons player other than Bijan right now doesn't seem like the best thing in the world to do. I would be more encouraged if there was no Drake London.
Minnesota 14th against tight ends, so they're solid. But if Drake London were out, you would still start Njoku and Logan Thomas, Jamie, over Kyle Pitts?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not there yet. I still have Pitts ahead of him.
And one more game. Giants at Raiders. Well, as Heath would say. How do you feel about the Vegas wide receivers?
Adams is a must-start guy, and Myers is a high-end number 3 receiver.
Would it shock you if Adams was like the number 4 receiver this week?
No.
Not really. It's basically there's a familiar script with the Giants every week. One receiver does really well, and pretty much nobody else. We'll see if that holds up. But they're going to have a rookie shadowing Devontae Adams. I'm pretty sure. I don't know how that's going to. I don't think that's going to go well. Beat the waiver wire. Remember, Chiefs, Dolphins, Rams, Eagles on bye next week. You've got to replace Matthew Stafford. So what do? Justin Fields is super rostered, 93%. But take a look just in case someone dropped Justin Fields.
Are you sure Justin Fields is playing next week?
No, I'm not. But boy, they would look pretty dumb if he doesn't, right? Because they didn't put him on IR. But
this is the Bears we're talking about.
I was going to recommend Geno Smith, but he's 86% roster. He's facing Washington. Check to see if Kyler Murray is available. But Taylor Heineke is the one that's widely available that I think might be interesting. He's at Arizona next week. Russell Wilson's at Buffalo. He's 68% rostered. I think the number 1 beat the waiver wire guy should be Khalil Herbert. He's not available in a ton of leagues, but he's 67% rostered. Anyone else jump out at you that, Singletary 44%, Akers 62%, Charbonnet 65%, Jahan Dotson 66%. But if I would pick up Herbert in a second if he were available. How about anything for you guys?
I mean, that makes a lot of sense because they're probably going to give him a big opportunity once he's healthy.
I hope so. Even if they don't, you got to take the shot. I mean, this is the roster percentage that Deontay Johnson was at just before he came off IR. And it was criminal that he wasn't, 100% rostered. Leonard Fournette I have on here just in case. We could see what happens there.
There's two Bills. Fournette would be one. Khalil Shakir would be the other. If we see another good game for Shakir, he gets Denver in week 10.
Baker gets the Titans next week, right?
He does.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Yep. He's 61%.
Good one.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, Jahan Dotson, see where this goes. Quentin Johnston, 29% rostered. See where
He's
that goes.
Bad. Do you dare chance it with Jonathan Mingo at Chicago in week 10?
He's been playing better, yeah. It's not a bad call.
He got a lot of work coming out of the bye, so I think that he may end up being like a low end thing, like maybe 10 PPR point thing.
Justice Hill, he got 4 catches last week. PPR, that's not bad if you're stuck, and who knows what happens with them moving forward. Royce Freeman's still available. We could see him take over more work in Los Angeles.
Is Kyron back after the bye or one more game?
One more game after the bye, week 12.
By the way,
Brandon Cooks is still 61%. He scored in 2 straight games.
And he gets the Giants next week. Well, but usually the Giants don't give up good games to 2 receivers. So Juju Smith-Schuster, I don't buy that, but you never know. I mean, that's the fear I have with DeMario Douglas, that maybe it's someone else. Maybe it's Juju.
I would be sick if it ended up being.
It would be bad, but
I hope they make Tyquan active, and that those are the 2 guys they lean on, is the 2 young guys, just to see what they have.
Let's go to the games. Dallas is at Philadelphia. Stat of the game. This one's for Brandon Cooks, obviously for Lamb, but let's see for Cooks. 16 wide receivers have scored 12.3 or more PPR fantasy points against the Eagles in 8 games. That's 2 per game. 13 wide receivers have scored 16.2 or more against the Eagles. They are Jefferson, Kendrick Bourne, Curtis Samuel, Evans, McLaurin, Addison, Nakua, Kupp, Garrett Wilson, Tyreek Hill, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel again, and McLaurin again. It's a lot of good receivers there. And we got to say that about the Eagles. They face a lot of good receivers, but they absolutely stink against receivers. So, this game I think is going to be kind of obvious for people. You're going to start the guys you normally start. Pollard might give people a little pause. But what about Brandon Cooks? What do you think about him, Dave Richard?
I was actually going to defer to Jamie on this one because Jamie was the one mentioning him as a waiver wire ad earlier in the week. And at first I thought, man, that's strange because he's not getting a lot of targets and all he's done is scored in 2 straight games. But if you go and you watch Cooks play, he still is a burner. Like he absolutely has the kind of speed that the Cowboys should harness to try and take down Philadelphia.
Triple game of the week, yeah. What a week this is gonna be. It's the Eagles and the Cowboys, yeah. A triple game of the week, folks.
Don't pull out that song for Saints Bears, please.
No, that's it. Triple is my limit.
But the text that you sent me said it was 5 games of the week this week.
Long story short, I think that Brandon Cooks is a good sleeper. Just, I wouldn't expect him to be a factor in the red zone.
Okay.
Even though he was last week.
Last 2 games he was.
Yeah, maybe he will be.
As I said, and I said this going into their bye when he had the game against the Chargers, that what I liked about it was I thought he was a couple of games removed from the knee injury that kept him out. I think it was week 2 or week 3. And the way that we've seen this offense operate for Mike McCarthy is Dak Prescott's having to make a lot of plays off script. And in that game against the Chargers, we saw some connection there, especially on the touchdown that carried over to the first game after the bye. And I think it's something that we might be able to look at moving forward. Not a must start guy by any stretch, but again, looking at the week and who's potentially going to be able to help you, high scoring game, I wouldn't be surprised if he's involved a little more.
On the season, Cooks has 4 red zone targets, 1 touchdown.
Dak Prescott is, I think, the easy number 8 this week after the Elite 7.
Yep.
Dak is 8 for both of you. He's 9 for Heath. Heath has Howell ahead of Prescott, but start Dak Prescott. So Pollard is outside the top 10. He's around 12. I don't really know what to say at this point. He scored single-digit PPR fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 games. Tony Pollard does not have a touchdown since week 1. The Eagles, you cannot run on them. They allow the fewest fantasy points to running backs. And the problem is they see the fewest carries, which is also why they're struggling against carries per game. Is also why they're struggling against receivers, right? Teams don't run on them. So, yeah, I mean, the fact that you have him ranked outside the top 10 is telling you guys you're a little nervous about Pollard, but he's still a start. Would you start Mostert over Pollard?
Yes.
For sure.
Would you start Zach Moss or Tony Pollard?
Pollard.
Tony.
You wouldn't go like Pacheco, Rashad White?
Pacheco, yes. White, no.
I would start Pollard over both of them.
All
Easier
right.
to do in half and non-PPR with White.
Okay, let's see. Only Brian Robinson and Breece Hall have scored a touchdown, and only no running back has more than 59 rushing yards against the Eagles. Talked about the Dallas receivers. Jake Ferguson, start or sit, Dave?
I like the red zone opportunities that he gets. He has 33 targets this year. 11 of them are in the red zone. He's used there. He's used as a check down option. He is a top 12-ish fantasy tight end, but he's touchdown dependent.
How many targets do you anticipate for Jake Ferguson?
6.
That's the magic number. There have been 3 tight ends with at least 6 targets against the Eagles, and all 3 have been good. He's
What if
got
I
3 games
said
on the season with 7?
Hunter Henry, TJ Hawkinson, and Logan Thomas. They've all
All
had
had 6 targets.
I think it's better to start Ferguson if you expect it to be a high-scoring game. And I think everybody expects it to be a high-scoring
Did you
game.
hear the music, Dave?
I would start Ferguson over Kyle Pitts if that's the question.
That is the question.
Yeah, no, I to me Ferguson is better than the other 2 guys I mentioned. Also better than Njoku, better than Thomas, better than Kyle Pitts.
Okay.
He's
Dave,
kind
how
of
about
like what Dak is at quarterbacks. He's like got past the guys that I feel somewhat comfortable with. Then there's Ferguson.
okay. Start Hurts. Swift over Pollard.
Easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dallas is good against the run too, but Swift over Pollard. AJ Brown, yes. Devontae Smith. Would you start Devontae Smith or Tony Pollard?
Smith.
You feeling it with Smith this week?
High scoring game, and I think we'll see how this Cowboys secondary handles this passing game.
I think I wrote in the notes that Dallas allows the second most fantasy points to receivers, but I think they allow the second fewest fantasy points.
Second fewest, yes.
They're pretty good.
But
Let's
it's
see.
also, I mean, you look at their opponents have been kind of disastrous.
The only good receivers who have struggled against them are good. I mean, Debo, both 49ers guys were not good in a game where Kittle went crazy. And the Rams receivers last week were not good. All right, so we trust Devontae Smith. Okay. Devontae Smith or Devontae Adams?
Adams.
Devontae Smith or Jordan Addison?
Smith.
And start Dallas Goedert. All right, start this game. How do you feel about the DSTs?
Eagles better than Cowboys just because Dak can be somewhat erratic in these type of games, especially on the road. Although the last time he played in Philadelphia, if you recall, was 2021, last game of the season. He threw 5 touchdowns.
Was Philadelphia playing in that game? Did they have anything to play for?
I don't think they did, and I think that was one of those games where we said, "You're not going to play Dak Prescott. It's week 18."
Right. But I don't know if we should say that he's awesome in Philadelphia if he went.
No. That's what I was saying. Like
that was backups for the Eagles.
Yeah.
Yep, I remember that. Yep.
But I think again, you just look at there's more potential of Dak being a little turnover prone and trusting the Eagles defense in their building.
Okay. By the way, Dak and Jalen Hurts did not face each other last year. It was Cooper Rush versus Hurts, and it was Dak versus Minshew. So looking forward to this game. Chicago is at New Orleans. Not really looking forward to this game. The Saints have struggled a bit on defense their last 2 weeks. 24 offensive points to the Jaguars, 27 points to the Colts in their last 2 games. But is DJ Moore the only player you're even considering starting for the Bears, Dave?
I'd consider Cole Kmet as like a low end option in PPR. That's about it.
Is this going to be a great game for Deontay Foreman or a terrible game? There doesn't really seem to be much in between.
No, I think it's going to be terrible. I expect the Bears to play from behind, so that negates him as a high volume running back. Saints defense typically pretty good against the run. I would stay away.
Yeah, 4th fewest fantasy points allowed to running backs.
Now they were terrible last week, but I don't think the Bears are in the same class as the Colts when it comes to running the ball.
I mean, I think it's so much easier to make the case against DJ Moore than for. Here's where he's finished the last 3 weeks in PPR. Wide receiver 37, wide receiver 21, wide receiver 51. You know, Heath has him 13th, and I think last week, I don't want to speak for Heath, he was talking about, his full season averages, and I don't know if that's factoring in at this point, but I don't care about his full season averages. I don't care about the Fields games, right? I only care about the Bajan games, and it's pretty consistent, 51 to 55 yards. He had a game where he almost scored 2 touchdowns, one of them rushing, one of them receiving. So that could happen, but this is what I'm noticing from backup quarterbacks. I mean, they struggle with the touchdowns, and the receivers, also struggle with the touchdowns in turn. But not only that, he's facing the Saints. And I say it every week, they might have the best outside cornerbacks in the NFL. They struggle against the slot. DJ Moore hardly ever plays in the slot right now. So I convince me that he's not a must-sit player.
His last 3 games, he obviously has a long track record against them because of playing in the NFC South with the Panthers. His last 3 games against them, 3 for 29, 1 for 2, 1 for 10.
Jeez. I told you to convince me not to.
Well, the 2 games prior to that, and I don't know the quarterbacks in all these games because there's been a lot of them, but 5 for 101. This is going back to January of 2021, so probably week 18 of the 2020 season. 5 for 101, and then 8 for 79 and a touchdown in probably week 2 of the 2021 campaign. So can't trust that. It's too long ago.
Yeah, way too long ago. Last year, he was on a different team last year. Look, with Bajan, he's getting about 7 targets per game, and his catch rate's at 76%. So maybe he gets you close to 15 PPR points.
I hope.
I think that's the hope. And in non-PPR, I think what Jamie just read off should scare the pants off you.
Yeah.
What if I'm not wearing it?
I will say that I've been a little underwhelmed by the Saints versus wide receivers. They're 14th against wide receivers. They did well against Hopkins. They did well against Ridley. Thielen scored. Dobbs had a big game. Godwin had 114 yards without Evans. Evans got hurt in that game. Nico Collins had 4 for 80 on 4 targets. Pittman had 8 for 40, but with a touchdown on 13 targets. So they haven't been quite as good as I think, I expected. Cole Kmet is low-end starter. Derek Carr is the start of the week. You guys have him 9th and 10th. Heath is a little bit lower on him. The Bears allow the 3rd most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So it's basically the Elite 7, Dak Prescott, and then it's Carr for Jamie. And then, Dave, you have one other player ranked ahead of Carr? Or am I
Sam
wrong?
Howell.
Sam Howell. Okay. So you can start Derek Carr, start Kamara, start or sit Chris Olave. And then, let's give Michael Thomas credit. If you need 11 points, he gets it every single week right around there. And then Shaheed can make a play too. But Jamie, let's start with Olave. Start or sit?
Start. Again, the targets have been there. It's a good matchup. I think if you have better options because he hasn't been consistent with the targets, then that's fine. You can go away from him. But there's going to be one of these games. This could easily be it in their own building against this defense. I know they've gotten a little bit better by keeping Johnson and trading for Sweat, but I still think this is a game where Carr will have some success. So he's proven he can have success without Olave having a big game. 3 straight games over 300 yards receiving. It's not like Olave's done a lot to help him there, but there's still that potential. So I'm still ranking him and trusting him as a number 2 receiver. Is he a top 12 guy like he was being drafted? No. There are other options that are better, but I do think this is a good spot for Olave to come through.
Olave or Kupp/Nacua?
Kupp, Olave, Nacua.
I'm worried that it'll end up being Olave, Kupp, Nacua, though. Easier to trust Kupp in PPR.
It is weird that the Bears, they've only allowed one receiver to have more than 69 yards, Mike Evans. They give up some points, but it's pretty strange. The receivers don't get a ton of targets against them, but we'll see. They're going to give up some big plays because that's what this Saints offense is. Yeah. Well, so do you feel like Michael Thomas is going to get what he normally gets?
I think Michael Thomas will get what he normally gets, maybe with a shot to get closer to 15. He could score. I don't think he'll see much of Jalen Johnson in the game. I got to double check to see if Jalen Johnson travels or not. The one thing that kind of gives me a little bit of pause is the reason why the Bears give up so much passing wise is because quarterbacks have all day to throw. If they've got Montez Sweat playing for them now, that makes their pass rush significantly better. And I wonder if that has some sort of an impact on maybe keeping the game more competitive and maybe giving Carr more than 26 pass attempts in the game. Maybe he'll have to throw just a little bit more because he, won't have all day and
I think
might not be able to run as well.
I think it's funny, like how much Sweat and Chase Young were coveted, and that pass defense for Washington's been so awful.
I know. Yeah, it's funny. They get beat over the top all the time. All right, starter sit Taysom Hill, and would you start Hill or Cole Kmet?
Kmet in PPR, Hill and non and half. Look, we've seen this story from Taysom Hill before. Just looking at last week's game, forget about the 2 games prior because he was more of a traditional tight end. He's not going to do that with Juwan Johnson back. They showed us that last week. He had 1 catch. I think you got to just understand, like, there could be a 9 for 60 game with no scores. There could be a 3 for 7 game with 2 scores.
You're talking rushing. You're talking rushing.
Rushing, yes. I'm sorry. They're just too much. He's just too much of a wild card. So I think if you're stuck at tight end and he's on your team, okay, I'll take my chances with the wild card. But again, I would rather have Njoku. I'd rather have Logan Thomas. I'd rather have Jake Ferguson, and that's in all formats. And so we'll see if Taysom Hill can fall into the end zone. That's really what you need at this point.
It is. Let me just see. I feel like the Bears probably give up a lot of rushing touchdowns, right? You would think. The Bears give up. No, they don't actually. They are like 10th in rushing touchdowns allowed to running backs. I don't know about overall. All right, that's it for that game. Let's go to the Colts and the Panthers. Stat of the game. These 2 teams allow the most rushing touchdowns per game to running backs. So I think you're probably not surprised to hear about the Carolina, but for the Colts, does it give you any hope for Chuba Hubbard? The Colts give up the 2nd most rushing touchdowns. Actually, they might even be tied with the Panthers. Whether most or 2nd most rushing touchdowns per game, Dave Richard.
It makes me a little more interested in Hubbard, but not enough to say that he's a must-start running back, even in PPR. I think he's a bye week guy, number 3 guy.
So who are the easy calls in this game? Thielen, Pittman, Taylor?
I think Moss is an easy call.
I think Moss and Downs are easy too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the only question about this game. I mean, Carolina, they give up the question is the pass volume. That is the problem. Do the Panthers have a good pass defense? Probably not. Are they good for fantasy against quarterbacks and wide receivers? Yeah, they kind of are, because they see the fewest pass attempts per game in the NFL. And you've got a team that we have seen them at times give, 18 carries to both of their running backs. Mm-hmm. So I do think that's a pretty big concern here. But I asked you about it earlier, Jamie, if you want to expand, saying that Josh Downs is kind of an easy call. I'm guessing like a high-end number 3 receiver.
I have him as a number 2 receiver. So I think there's just, you got to buy into what he's done for the last month and really every game with Gardner Minshew. There's been a strong connection. There's been now back-to-back games with touchdowns. He played his college football at North Carolina, by the way, so this could be somewhat of a homecoming for him.
I like that.
So, yeah, I just look at what he's been able to do. And I'll go back to Chuba Hubbard. I actually think Hubbard's a decent play this week, and that's kind of why I like Minshew a little bit more. I think the Panthers are going to hang around. I don't think this is going to be a game where the Colts steamroll them. I don't think they have that type of ability. And we've seen this run defense without Grover Stewart on the field been absolutely atrocious. So I think Hubbard is, if he's still going to be the lead guy, which I don't know why they would go away from that based on how they used Miles Sanders last week. I have Hubbard as a low end number 2 running back. So I don't necessarily, I'm not scared to have to trust him if I need to this week. Yes, he's more of a bye week guy, not a slam dunk, but I do think he'll have some success here just based on the matchup. So Bryce Young has looked better. I think we've talked about Thielen. I think Jonathan Mingo is somebody that could have some opportunities here also. So this is going to be a competitive game. So I do think that we'll get some more options than just Taylor and Moss running through this defense.
Yeah, another thing. So you mentioned the Grover Stewart not playing for the Colts. Zaire Franklin, starting linebacker, he's out. He's not practicing so far as well. So, maybe a reason to take a look at Hubbard. So would you start Hubbard or Singletary if Pierce is out?
Hubbard.
I think I'd take Devin just because I know he's going to get more work.
Would you start Hubbard over Alexander Madison and Cam Akers?
Yeah.
Okay. So Hubbard is in play.
When did Stewart's suspension start?
The Browns
Last
game when I
week.
made Jerome Ford start of the week.
Last week?
2 games ago.
2 games ago?
So they've given up 4 touchdowns to running backs on the ground in those last 2 games. Before that, 2, 4, 6, 7 touchdowns to running backs in 6 games.
Yeah,
I think it's
so
making a difference.
been a problem either way. Okay, where are we here? So would you start Downs, Josh Downs, or Demario Douglas?
Downs.
I would start Downs over DJ Moore.
I would too.
Oh,
In PPR.
Downs.
Yeah, I
Or-
might do it in non-PPR as well.
Downs or Jacoby Myers?
Downs.
Josh Downs.
All right, we got some Gabe David. Here we got some questions from the chat. Gabe Davis or Josh Downs?
I'd only start Downs over Davis in full PPR. Half and non, I go Davis.
I'll take Davis in all 3 formats.
Cooper Kupp or Zach Moss?
Cup.
Do you consider Moss in non-PPR? I think I might. PPR, no way.
Hubbard or Brian Robinson?
Hubbard.
I think I have Robinson higher.
And this one basically comes down to Puka, or this says pick 3: Downs, Keenan Allen, Garrett Wilson, Puka Nacua. So it's basically Downs or Puka Nacua.
As long as Puka's fine, it would be Downs sitting. But I like all 4.
Good stuff. Thank you for these questions from the chat. That helps a lot. All right. Anything else from this game? We should talk more about Minshew. I'm sorry. And Bryce Young is actually 16th for Jamie and 12th for Heath. So that's interesting. Not even close for Dave.
Welcome to week 9.
Yeah, welcome to week 9. No kidding. Bryce Young might be QB5 next week with those buys. But Gardner Minshew or Sam Howell?
Howell.
I like Howell better, but there's like 4 guys that are relatively the same to me. And it's Howell, Carr, Minshew, and Stroud. I think they're all very I'll put 5 in there. Baker.
Mayfield, yeah.
Yeah, they're all going to be somewhere between like 18 and 20 fantasy points. And, one may get a 3rd touchdown if they have a big day. It wouldn't shock me. But, it's basically just like they have somewhat favorable matchups. They've been somewhat good recently. And you're just hoping that one of them stands out above the rest. I can't tell you with any certainty which one will definitely be better. To me, it's Carr just based on what his matchup is. And, the back-to-back 300-yard games, but Howell coming off a huge game. Minshew, huge 31-point game 2 games ago, 18 points last week. That's just where these guys live. They're going to live in the 18 to 20-point range, and that's what you hope that they get because that's why you're starting.
We have one more question, Dave. This one's for you. It's from Eric. What color is Miss Lippy's car?
Blue.
Jamie, you can answer this one too, if you know. It's
No idea.
blue. It's blue, right?
Yes.
Miss Lippy's car. No, I don't think so.
I will bet
Is it? I feel like
$3
it's
on it.
green. Miss Lippy's
I haven't seen Jeff
car.
Lippman in a while, so I don't know what
It's
like.
green, Dave. It's green. Miss Lippy's car is green.
Really?
The duck is blue. He drew a blue duck.
Miss Lippy's car is great. How do I must have. I did watch that movie drunk a lot in college.
All right, let's take a break.
It
Rams.
is green. What the hell?
Yeah, it's green. Rams and
I'll be
Packers.
$3.
I'm sure I've told you this before. You probably don't remember. My music teacher when I was in elementary school was Miss Lippy. So I always thought that was super cool. Also, my dad owns Madison Hotels. So we just have so much in common. Rams and Packers when we come back. That's obviously a joke. We'll be right back. Okay, here we go. Rams and Packers. Stat of the game. Green Bay has allowed 15 or more PPR fantasy points to a wide receiver in every game. But they've only once allowed multiple wide receivers to score more than 12 PPR fantasy points in the same game. That was last week with Addison and Osborne. So I kind of brought it up with the Giants earlier. The Vikings, or the Packers rather, following a similar path. One receiver usually does well, but not 2. But we'll see. So you guys are obviously higher on Kupp and basically treating him as a must start. Where you have Nacua ranked?
Still treating him as a must start. Still top 20 receiver. But again, you're talking about 2 guys that were, for the most part, since Kupp has come back, consistently ranked in the top 10. It's just you have to downgrade them to whatever degree you feel comfortable downgrading them and who you feel comfortable starting over them. So I know, like for me, I have a couple leagues where Nakua is the 4th receiver on my team. For the most part, he's been the 3rd receiver. Like I've been starting Nakua over Jalen Waddle in a couple of leagues that I'm switching this week. So you got to really have great options to sit these guys. I just hope Nakua is fine. Who knows how much this knee injury is a problem.
Yeah, the one league I'm sitting him, it's for Waddle and Lamb and Mostert.
Yeah, makes sense.
But Rippon, I do want to give him credit, right? So 2 starts last year. He threw for 225 yards against the Jets in his first start. That's Jets super tough. Second start was 21 of 26 for 197 yards, a touchdown and an interception against Arizona. That's a really strong game on 26 pass attempts. Now they might try to keep him there and just run the ball a lot. So who is the best running back in this game? Rams at Packers. Dave, who's the best fantasy running back, highest ranked?
I've got Henderson. No, I don't. I have Jones ranked the highest. I literally have these 4 back to back to back to back. So
really?
Yeah, tough to have conviction on any of them. But Jones, then Dillon, then Henderson, then Freeman. That's PPR.
Jones, Dillon, Henderson, Freeman in PPR. How do you see it, Jamie?
Henderson, space, Jones, Dillon, space, Freeman.
Okay. I got some questions about this game from the chat. Puka or Pacheco?
I'll take Pacheco.
I might take Puka in full PPR.
I go Pacheco. 2-1, Dave. Puka or Rashee Rice?
Puka.
Puka Nacua.
Aaron Jones or Chuba Hubbard? Half PPR.
I believe I currently have them back to back. Right now, Jones slightly ahead, but I might switch that with Hubbard.
Jones.
I can't have any faith in Jones.
No, none. It's funny. I traded in a super flex league of analysts. I traded Will Levis for Raheem Mostert. And then I was offered, because I just keep picking up quarterbacks. It's kind of your theory, Adam. Anytime there's a quarterback available, I just keep picking them up.
Same. I just did that.
So I picked up Will Levis. I picked up Aiden O'Connell. And then I got offered Darrell Henderson for Aiden O'Connell. And I countered with, since I just made that trade, knowing what Mostert's value is, I countered with Aiden O'Connell for Aaron Jones. And I got turned down.
Aiden O'Connell for Aaron Jones. But you basically, by picking up Will Levis, you just picked up Raheem Mostert. So
100%.
do that in super flex. I just
I
picked
was
up
never going to play Will Levis.
So sick.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Rams running backs. I guess, like, how high do you have Darrell Henderson?
Top 20. This is all about Sean McVay. This is totally all about Sean McVay. He turned Kyron Williams, who we didn't think was a great talent, into a must-start fantasy running back. Henderson in 2 games is scoring both games over 11.5 PPR points. I think he'll be right there again. This Packers run defense is bad.
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah. They allow the 6th most fantasy points. They also allow the 8th most receiving yards to running backs.
And that's Henderson's role.
It's not. That's the thing, though. This is the weird thing. They're running the same amount of routes, but Freeman doesn't have a target. They split third down evenly. It's not necessarily Henderson's role, but he is the only one that Stafford had been throwing to. What makes me nervous about Henderson is that he's averaging 3.1 yards per carry, and Royce Freeman is averaging 5.2 yards per carry. I mean, did they just say, maybe we should get Freeman more involved? And they both have 1 carry inside the 5-yard line. They both have 1 touchdown. The difference has been for Henderson is the passing work, but it's not like Freeman comes off the field and passing downs and Henderson comes on.
No,
So
they rotate series. It's one series for Henderson, and then when he's tired, Freeman comes in, and then the next series goes to Freeman, and when he's tired, Henderson comes in. The one thing, I don't even know if this is true, that who's the 2-minute back? I'll check my notes on it. I think it was Freeman last week.
Whoever's turn it is to be in the game.
It might come down to that. They just rotate them. There's not a lot of easy ways to look at it and say, okay, this is the role. You can expect this player on the field at this point. And then you're throwing in a new quarterback on top of it.
Gus Edwards or a running back in this game?
Oh,
I'll take Henderson over Gus in PPR.
I'll take Gus all the way.
All right. For the Packers, is it basically just sit them all?
Jones is the closest to being a starter. Yeah, if you can avoid them, they're bad. You can't figure out which receiver is going to be good week to week. It's tough. Yeah. It's very tough. Very frustrating.
I went back. I watched Christian Watson's targets last week. He had 3 for 33 on 8 targets, and it reminds me a little bit of Chris Godwin because they threw to him 4 times in the end zone last week.
How many drops did you count for him?
I don't know. I wasn't counting, but
LaFleur said after the game that there were 6 drops, and then I think he said he meant that there were more after the game.
Yikes. Yeah, they're not really they're not clicking. And his ADOT is still extremely high. He's still mostly just a downfield guy, but I love the fact that they're throwing to him in the end zone. Gives me a little hope, but not to the point where I want to start Christian Watson or any of these guys. All right, that's it. Sit the tight ends, right?
Yes.
I think there's appeal to Higbee. Brett Rippon has a career track record of utilizing his tight ends, and he even did it last week when he came in and played.
Okay. Green Bay's DST, 34% rostered. They are a low-end starter. Minnesota's at Atlanta. Stat of the game that probably won't influence you at all. The Falcons allow 3.6 yards per carry to running backs with Grady Jarrett on the field on 100 carries and 4.1 yards per carry with him off the field on 74 carries. So half a yard worse. But I know that's not going to give you a lot of confidence to start Alexander Madison. Who are you confident in? Jamie, who are you confident to start in this game? Minnesota at Atlanta.
Bijan Robinson.
That's it. Not Addison.
I still obviously starting Hawkinson and still starting Addison, but confidently Bijan and Hawkinson. I'll say that.
Okay. I mean, Dave, what do you want to tell us about Jaron Hall?
I will tell you that I think he's a good fit for their offense as far as being like a West Coast type of quarterback. I think he's got decent accuracy on short throws, so at least that's something that's good. Wouldn't expect him to be dominant on throws longer than like 15 yards downfield. And I think he can just handle being a game manager. They might throw the ball. Usually they're throwing the ball like 65, 70% of the time. I think they'll probably aim for somewhere between 55 and 60% until they're trailing, if they're trailing. But I think he's good enough to get the ball to Hawkinson for sure. And Addison can make plays after the catch, and he's going to get targets too.
So why don't we like Madison more? You know, is it because
it stinks?
I
mean, I hate to say it.
They just traded away one of their best offensive linemen.
He wasn't playing the last.
He wasn't playing,
but
they liked Reisner better.
It's just a bad situation.
Paul Reisner. No.
And the show grinds to a dead halt.
People like it. You like it, folks. Paul Reisner. You're going to tell all your friends. Water cooler joke right there. You never guess what they said on FFT. I think we spoke enough about Addison. Heath hates him. You guys like him this week. Not going to start Osborne. Oh, Heineke. I thought maybe he'd be a little higher. I'll be controversial. Ready? I'm going to tell you the guys that you have ranked ahead of Heineke that I would start Heineke over. Levis.
That's just me.
I would start him. No, Jamie did too. I would start him over Zach Wilson, which Dave has Wilson one spot higher. Jamie has Wilson behind him. I would start him over Daniel Jones, which is Dave again. I would start him over Jordan Love, which is Jamie. And I would start him over Bryce Young. He would be somewhere like QB 16 for me. Taylor Heineke.
Must start guy.
Pick him up for
I believe in this Vikings defense. I think they can get pressure on the quarterback. I think their secondary is playing great. Taylor Heineke's proven to be a mistake-prone, maybe too aggressive for his own good type of quarterback. And if he doesn't have Drake London, it's going to be even harder to really.
Oh, that's true. I amend. If Drake London doesn't play, then I would not start Taylor Heineke.
But even listen, here's the thing. Even if London plays, there's no guarantee that he's going to get double-digit targets again because they use so many other people. And Arthur Smith wants to be so unpredictable that you've got to prepare for Kaderil Hodge and Van Jefferson. I'm nervous to start Heineke. He'd be more of like the type of quarterback I'd lean into in a DFS tournament play, where you stack him with London if he plays or Pitts if London doesn't play. That'll probably be a little popular.
I just want to be clear. I'd also be nervous to start Taylor Heineke, but I think
I'd also be nervous to start like 25 quarterbacks.
Exactly. But if Drake London does play, is he a must start?
He'd be like a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end flex.
If he were coming into the game healthy, I would have no hesitation to start him, but he's not. and Minnesota's done a pretty nice job. Well, recently they've gotten a lot better. They do give up the 5th most fantasy points overall to wide receivers, but they've improved. They give up a lot of deep balls, so that could work for Heineke. Could work for Pitts.
Yes.
No hesitation for Bijan. Bijan, by the way, 62 or fewer total yards in 3 of his last 5 healthy games, not even counting the headache game. But no hesitation, Dave, with Bijan?
No hesitation in calling him like a top 12 running back. I probably have him ranked too high. I've got him as a top 10 guy. So probably like a low-end RB1. PPR helps him out a little bit because he can catch the football. It's a matter of Heineke finding him and actually throwing short.
We're done with Jonnu Smith, right? For now.
Yeah. Routes are going down. Volume is going down. Everything's going down.
Going down for real. Dave likes Kyle Pitts. He has him 6th. Jamie has him 11th. Or actually, that's non-PPR. 7th for Dave in PPR. 10th for Jamie in PPR. And Jamie has stepped away for a moment. So Dave and I will finish the show, at least for now. Giants are at the Raiders. Stat of the game in 2 appearances, 1 start. Aiden O'Connell has thrown 38.5% and 23.1% of his passes to running backs. So there really should, I think, no hesitation to start Jacobs this week, right?
Yeah, especially in PPR. He's top 5 for me. I expect him to get a lot of targets. It's just an easy thing for O'Connell to do. And what I'm expecting from the Raiders offense is to just dial everything back and make everything easy. So what would that mean? That would mean leaning on Jacobs. It would mean running it more just in general. And then O'Connell's going to get schemed up to throw to Adams. It just makes sense that after 2 games of Adams being frustrated and aggravated, the new play caller says, okay, let's get our best player the ball. And so I think O'Connell can at least carry that out. And I think Adams gets a lot of targets.
2 questions for Jamie. He's back. 1, is this basically the easiest start-sit game? I mean, start Jacobs, start Barkley, start Adams. And 2, I can't tell. What jersey are you wearing?
Not telling
you.
Yes. The only question mark I think would be Myers.
Right.
And if you're starting him, I think in 3 receiver leagues, you're starting him. In 2 receiver leagues, you're probably sitting him. The couple of guys that I'm interested in is Wan'Dale Robinson with Jones back and no Waller. And deeper leagues, Daniel Bellinger, because we have seen that connection there at times prior to Waller joining the team. So will Bellinger have an opportunity here if you're stuck at tight end? And will Wan'Dale Robinson or somebody else? I mean, look, hopefully, Jalen Wyatt can make some plays. Maybe we see, some Darius Slayton as well. But somebody here, because I would not be surprised we get to Sunday, if not sooner than that, and Darren Waller's placed on IR. And then we got to find somebody who's going to catch passes for the Giants moving forward.
So, yeah, I was thinking that maybe I'd prefer Slayton, but if you look at what we've seen against the Raiders, they give up the 5th most yak. I don't know why, but teams don't throw deep on them. They see the fewest air yards per pass attempt in the NFL. So that's eye-opening. And they give up basically the fewest big plays, 2nd fewest catches of 20 or more air yards, the fewest catches of 20 or more yards, fewest big plays in the passing game, the Las Vegas Raiders. But they give up a lot of yak, a lot of short area stuff and a lot of yak. And that is obviously Wan'Dale Robinson for the Giants. So I think I am starting him. I have my podcast league team stinks, and I have a lot of buys this week. And I'm like, you know what? I'm starting Wan'Dale. Why not? It'll be fun. Let's see what happens. So
what could go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna lose anyway. I've got like all my good players on buy, and I don't have that many good players to begin.
I think he's a good DFS play.
All right, and Jacoby Myers. I'll give you some Jacoby Myers ors. Jacoby Myers ors. Zach Moss.
I like Moss, but I think it's harder in PPR to say that.
Jacoby Myers or a Browns running back against Arizona.
Same answer.
Yeah, I'd go Myers PPR over those guys.
Jacoby Myers or Nico.
Unless Jerome Ford's out, then I go Fremont.
Jacoby Myers or Nico Collins or Tank Dell.
Collins, Myers, Dell.
Agreed.
Look, I know Myers was terrible in the one game with Aiden O'Connell. It's one game. It was a rookie making his first start. Dave's 100% right. He's going to focus on his best players. So should the Raiders. But it's not like Myers has been a stiff. He's been a pretty good player in this offense. And I just don't know if he just disappears.
Do you have him ranked as a number 3 receiver? I do. Like, I think he still qualifies as a number 3.
Oh, for sure.
I can find a bunch of receivers I'd rather start.
For sure.
I have one last question. It's for Dave. Dave, may I use your bathroom?
You may.
So what happened, Dave?
On Halloween. So obviously we live in a nice neighborhood with trick-or-treaters coming by all the time. I say nice neighborhood like it's some sort of swanky neighborhood. It's really not that. Knock on the door, open the door. 3 boys. They look like middle schoolers. First boy says, trick or treat. Second boy says, trick or treat. Third boy says, excuse me, sir, can I please use your bathroom? Please, please. I really need to go. I live 20 blocks away and I took the bus to get here, so I can't go home. And so I thought he was kind of just messing around. So I told him no. And he looked unhappy. And he looked at my bowl of candy. And he looked at me and he goes, you've got trash candy. And he took a piece of candy and walked away. And I was so amused by it. Like, I know that, like, I shouldn't be, but, like, it's like the type of thing that I might have said when I was a kid. 10 minutes goes by, another knock on the door. There's little kids there. And then the same kid shows up. And he's like, have I been to this house? I said, yeah, I'm the one with trash candy. He goes, oh, yeah. And then I kind of, like, had a moment where, like, I was wondering, like, is he back to use the bathroom? Does he really need to go? So I was like, do you really, really need to go? And, like, at first he didn't know what I was talking about. And then he was like, oh, yeah, sure. And I was like, before I could even answer, my wife, who was standing there, was going, no. No way. We're not letting strangers in to use the bathroom. So I said, sorry, kid, there's McDonald's a couple blocks down the street. And as he's walking away, he goes, your wife, man. Hate her.
No way. No way. Oh, my God.
I kind of get that, too. Like, the kid, has his pulse on things.
That is so funny, man. Did you have trash candy?
Oh, it was cheap candy for sure.
Like what? I mean, you couldn't
shut the lights off in my house and sit there in the dark to avoid giving people candy.
You couldn't spring for the expensive stuff like M&Ms and Snickers.
What was it? What's trash candy?
I don't even know where my wife bought it, but it's like Tootsie Roll Pops and Skittles.
Oh, you got the cheap big bag, right?
I don't know what we got. I'm at work 12 hours.
That's okay. I'm okay with that candy. I like a nice.
It was not. I refuse to let her buy like generic candy. Like, you remember those brown and orange wax wrap? I don't even know what was in those things. Hate those things. Those weird fruit flavored ones where it's just a picture of the fruit on the outside. Like, at least she's got something that's got like branding on it that makes sense. Shout out to Mr. Owl for the Tootsie Roll suckers that we
3 licks. Yeah. All right, folks. Have a great one. We'll talk to you on the mailbag in an hour.
I can't believe Miss Lippy's score was green and I said blue.
It was green, Dave. It was green. But
I'm so pissed at myself.
You probably think condition.
I'm more mad at that than I am about where I ranked Will Levis this week.
Later.